Welcome everyone to today's user drop-in. We're talking about approvals and publishing. So I put an also known as versioning. I hold our hand up. You know, some of the terminology that people use, it changes, which can be quite complicated or confusing, should I say. You never know, that might appear in the tips towards the end in terms of how to deal with some of that. What we'll do today, I don't want to jump straight into the functionality because that's kind of the how. You know, we'll have a look. Yeah, we'll take some questions as we go through. But in my old typical fashion, we'll look at ask a few of the questions about why, when, who, what. Yeah, we'll look at the how, and then we can we'll just share some tips that we've learned over the years, and beginning with the why. Yeah. As we often do at Skore, this is not I'm not going to say overused. This is a glue. You know, the process maturity model that we bang on about. It's that glue that sticks a lot of what we do together. And really, the why about why you'd want to version, you want to get your processes signed off and approved. It varies. Yeah, and a lot of the when, the who, the what will depend on why we're looking at doing this authorization. But it could be anything from the strategic initiative. And when I say about a strategic initiative, it can be, you know, we want our processes to be at this level of maturity. So a big part of having a mature process, as you come up this level, with having it being owned. Yeah, and part of ownership of processes, which we define, you may have your own definition, is that it's signed off, it's approved, it's available to people. And there'll be some nuances in that, but that's pretty much the reason why. Right down to the reasons about being, you can approve at any level, yeah, on this process, and a lot of people will go for approvals of sign off of processes for tactical reasons, which we'll explore as well. Yeah, we're running a project. We want to get Hamza to sign off that these are right for this purpose at this set of time. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be the utopia of having all your processes at a high level of maturity. It can still be used as a tactical tool for your projects, or your initiatives. Yeah, and again, there's loads of reasons why you might want to do it, but for me, it goes back to the basics of having confidence in content. Yeah, if you go and look for a process or any piece of knowledge in your organization, and you open it up and it's got version 0 on it, or last time it was approved was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, are you confident that that's going to be something you want to follow and you want to use? Yeah, so it's really, for me, that's one of the biggest reasons, is to give confidence in the content that you're hoping people will adopt. Yeah, make sense? So probably lots of other reasons why, but that's pretty much my big reasons. When's always an interesting one, which we get asked quite a bit. And again, I'm not giving you all the answers here. We're just having a bit of a discussion about what are some of the triggers. The biggest reason to approve a process sounds painfully obvious, but it's when the process has changed. Yeah. How do you know a process has changed? Hopefully, someone's going to tell you. Yeah. And as you know, in Skore, you can set up reviews. People can comment. So often that will be the trigger. Yeah, of why a process is going to be changed, which will then hopefully trigger the fact that you want to go and request that approval. Yeah. Other kind of internal triggers. When I say internal, it's to your business. The process owner has changed. Obviously, often that's a reason. Yeah, it's that, again, goes back to that sense of ownership. It will go back to that confidence that, you know, if someone's news coming to that content, that they see the right owner, and often, you know, the first instance of when someone will go for approval is when you have a process. When I say a new process, I mean it's either new to you as a business or newly documented. Yeah, you want to go through that life cycle of a process. There's upstream external events, all will drive through to that, the fact that this process has changed. This is just a selection that we see time and time again. Versioning and approvals is often seen as part of an audit or a compliance framework, and what I mean by that is you have an annual audit, often, you know, in certain areas, and you have to show evidence that a process has been reviewed and it is at the latest version. Again, so and there'd be other things, yeah. So external events, you know, systems change. One of your suppliers have changed the system. Which might be a required change to your process, or it might be actually an opportunity. Again, it will all come back into hopefully a review or a comment against the process. A regulatory change often drives the need to update a process, get it signed off again, and then yeah, I mean, COVID, for example, competition, all these other things that will affect your business. Even if you think you're pretty static, the world around you changes. Hopefully that leads to your processes being reviewed, updated, and reapproved. Yeah. The other one I had is about mergers and acquisitions as well. That's often another reason why you would review process, get them signed off. Often it leads to processes being changed, owners being changed, or more people involved. So again, that's another reason why, or another variation and being adapted into a process. I refrain from putting too much text on here, and this is a great question. I think, is it always the process owner that is going to sign off your processes? My view and my experience is it normally usually is. Yeah, it's probably that's normally. Signing off a process, an approval process, is often part of that approval, but there's instances where it might not be, and what that might be is, and it goes back to the why. Yeah, why are we getting approval for the process, and where are we in there? It could be a project process. You're at the early days of process mapping, and we're going through a system implementation, opportunity identification exercise, in which case you might have an SME that's approving the process and the content that's attached to it. It might be a technical lead that might need to go and put their rubber stamp on the process and say, yes, this is it. So again, there's reasons why it might not be. Personally, I think 9 times out of 10 it's the process owner. And then the what are we actually approving? And again, I've split this out into what we see is there's 2 areas. We're obviously approving the process. Yeah, that's what we're looking at, and what we mean by the process is the boxes, the lines, and the attachments, that information you're connecting to your processes. But I also think you're looking at the accuracy of the process. Is it the right process? Again, going back to the why, is it the process? And again, some sort of threads to that is it the right as is process that we're signing off? Yeah, are you asking someone to sign off, this is how we operate today? Is it the 2B we're asking them to sign off? So you need to be really clear of what you're asking. If we're assuming it's the process owner, what it is that they're approving. Yeah, what the reason? You might be creating training content using the process. So is it fit? So basically, is it fit for purpose for the reason why you want to do that? And then also you've got the quality. Now we're asking one person to approve quite a lot. Yeah. So actually, what people generally do is an approval generally comes after a set of reviews. So most people will put the stuff like the quality review in terms of when I say quality, and it's like the mapping standards. Is it the right format? Are we using the right terminology? And is it readable? Yeah, is a general kind of rule of thumb. And so most people will have an approval step after a set of reviews, and they'll include different stakeholders for different reasons in that review. And then as an approver, as a reviewer, that's terminology, isn't it? Yeah, as that approver, you're really kind of looking at that information, looking at the comments, looking at the feedback from the reviews, and saying, are we happy with this process, depending on what the reason is for. Yeah. Again, that's what we're, but yeah, it's the process in essence, and then it'll be different facets of that, depending why. Let's have a look how we do it in the application, and then we'll come back to some of the tips, I think. So we've got a process. This is a very simple process. We're not going to click on everything today. My suggestion is, if you haven't played around with approvals, go and play. Yeah, before you ask your stakeholders and your process owners to go and do it, understand it yourself. And we can see here we've got a process. You'll notice here what I've included the version and the approval information in the template. These are dynamic fields you can include in your process templates if you so wish. Not everyone does that. It depends on the process. But we generally always recommend you put the process owner in at least. And you can see up here, version 10 published on October the 14th, 2020. So I can open up the latest editable version. If I do that, we can see where this process is today. So the question there, you've got when viewers come into the process, they'll see the last published version. Yeah, the last signed off version of that process. They can then click to the latest editable version, which is the latest work in progress. And then we have to find out. You can always come back to that process, but to get to the approval, maybe not overly intuitive, but you have to go to the publish button. We want to publish a new version of that process, basically. And you come to this. So if you haven't seen this before, we won't go into too much detail, but you've got all the different versions, all the different revisions of this process. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but as you're mapping processes and making changes, it's creating what we call revisions, which are basically just line in the sand. It creates a copy of that process so you can revert back to it. What the approval is doing is we can say, I want to now make this a version. So we'll change that number from 10 to 11 to 12 to 13 or 0 to 1 to the like. You can tag revisions and versions with notes and the like, but this very simply, we do the request. You've got two buttons here: publish now, i.e. self-approval, which is the one we've just heard user does, or we can request approval. And when you request approval, it's quite simple. This pops out. You can say, I want to do it, which is the same as self-publishing. The process owner, default to me, or someone else. And then what we strongly recommend is you add a comment in here, because that comment will not only appear to the person you're requesting the approval, it will also be in the history, the audit log. So it might be that we're approval before ISO review, or ISO accreditation, or approval to change, to accept the change. I think in this demo I've added controls and a slight change to the process. So just put that in, make it really obvious, and it would be as simple as that. So you'd request the approval, that will then they'll get emails and come into the system to do it, and you'll get a new version of that process. It's to map that process life cycle. What are you asking people to do? How does it fit into your process of optimization? And be really clear, and it will change depending on why you're asking for that approval. We always supply people with, and I think if you haven't got a version, we can give you a version. This is just examples, but really work out, where does it come into your process life cycle to do an approval? And who is it you're doing? In fact, so again, putting to when, to be explicit, when do we accept self-approval? First top tip is to map out that process, because it will work out when you want to use it. It will standardize the terminology that you're using. And it will be a great training aid when you're onboarding process owners. To say, look, this is how you fit in. This is where your role fits in, especially if you're making use of things like comments and the review cycle. So all those things would be in here as a process. So top tip to do that. So again, this is from my experience. Other team members in Skore will have other points in here, I'm sure. But start approvals and versioning sooner than you think. People have a habit of holding off. Actually, it can take time. People are reluctant. If you're reliant on people logging in and taking the time to review. So try and do it earlier than you need it, depending on why you're doing it. If it's in a project or, again, back to the audit example. Try and keep them frequent. Now, I put frequent in inverted commas there, because what's frequent for one process might not be frequent for another process. So some processes in your organizations will remain static. They're not important processes. There's no reason to keep on improving them. Like my expenses example, for example, you're not going to change your expenses system every year, are you? So most of that is going to be static. So actually, I wouldn't expect new versions at times. But other process, like your innovation process or your manufacturing process or your sales process, actually that should be changing and learning. You should be learning and having a dynamicity towards that. So I would expect there to be more versionings. And then the last point, everyone laughs at me within Skore, because it's one of the things I kind of say quite a lot, is don't overthink it. Don't look at versioning or an approval as a kind of really important step. Look at it as just part of your ongoing process life cycle. So if you approve something one week and it changes the next, brilliant. It shows you're on top of your processes, and they're going to constantly improve. I've gone into so many organisations over the years where they left processes unapproved because it just seems too much. It just seems too big in their mind. When actually it shouldn't be a barrier. It's a tool that you've got to check. You have to have confidence in your processes. So trying to instill that culture of, let's approve it. If it needs to change next week, we'll do that. If it changes after that, we'll do that. Try and get people used to it, because it shows that you're keeping your process up to date, and it just keeps people used to used to approving it. Yeah, and gets them into that culture of continually looking at processes, taking feedback and improving them. It shouldn't be an annual thing, is what I'm getting at. Yeah. Okay, team. Well, thanks for joining.